What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. I'm Bind, and today I want to talk a little bit about line art. Since I've been refining my approach to especially digital line art in the past few weeks and months a lot, I wanted to show you what I'm doing, my approach, what I use, and hopefully you can take away something for yourself from that for your own art. So let's get into it. Broken cup still exists, guys. I hope you can appreciate that. So here's the deal. In the past on this channel, we've been doing line art in different ways. Whether it's just plain analog back there on the desk, or whether it's sketching in order to do a concept for digital painting. And of course, if you go over to my ArtStation, you will find stuff like this, or that, or this one, or that one. And in all of them, you can see that I'm using black lines, very classical ink drawing style line work. And then on top, we'll do some rendering, some different styles of colorization. So today I want to talk a little bit about my recent approach. Of course, it's not too much different from what I've been doing, but it slowly refines over time, I would say. And I will explain for the first time exactly how I'm setting the brush up and why I'm doing that, and what results, what advantages and disadvantages you can get from that. So drawing analog, like we're doing over here on the desk on paper, it's a very simple process. You just pick your favorite pen or ink drawing device for that matter, and your paper, and then the result pretty much will produce itself. So it's not much apart from your personal style and preferences that is really a mystery. Digitally, however, it is much different. So, because if you ever tried Procreate or Photoshop or Clip Studio, you will know that they have 100 brushes, 1,000,000 brushes even. You can download brushes and they all will just draw a line, but they will all pretty much look very different. Some will be soft, some will be very hard edged, some will be grainy, some will have a texture, some will be dual brushes, some will change diameter with pen pressure, and some will change opacity with pen pressure, and all of that jazz. So all of a sudden, just drawing a black line is no longer that simple. So recently, I've been refining my own approach to setting up the lines in order to be able to meet a certain standard and be very intuitive about the line art. And that's what I want to show you today. So let's get into Photoshop. All right, guys. So I got a project open here in Photoshop. Just a canvas that is roughly 5,000 by 3,000, something like that, to have plenty of pixel real estate, which I like to have. Then we got a background that is white, and I got an optional paper texture, which just gives me a little bit of this grainy look on the paper. Not going into details how to set that up. We'll do that in another video. Also, I have one about markers where you can find that information. Now, the actual line art I'm planning to do, it will go on a new layer that is just a transparent layer, because I want the lines separate from the background in this case. Of course, you can argue that you could draw black and then draw white in order to erase. I'm not doing that. I don't like doing that. And the reason for that is for colorization later. It is much more practical to have these lines separate from the background. So then I want to have, well, let's bring the paper texture for once. I have the blackest black I can select, which is yeah, basically RGB 0. My plan is to draw with pure black, but still have a brush that looks kind of organic, so that on the edges it's a little bit rough. So everybody knows the normal brushes. There is the hard round, which is super smooth, much too smooth for my taste. And then it exists also in the variant of where you have pen pressure changing the diameter, which is cool. You can get kind of a calligraphy look from that. I sometimes use this. It's a nice look, but to emulate drawing lines like you would on paper, I don't like this. So I will not use this here. What I will use instead is a brush that I set up for myself, and it looks like this. So if we zoom in there a little bit, you will see that this looks pretty organic, but in the middle, the volume is still 100% black, and you can see that when I hover over it down here in the info, right? So the good thing about that is, if that was not pure black, which a lot of brushes for brush strokes are set up to not be pure black, instead, if we go in here and we change that brush, and we give it some transfer, and we say, yeah, give me some pen pressure, and now I can use the pen pressure, and now I can do all kinds of shenanigans, right? It almost looks like a pencil, and it's nice, and see what I can do. Only problem with that is this does not behave like a classical ink brush now, because the ink brush is not a pencil, right? And also, if I want to erase from this now, I have the problem that you see how this erases and then cuts through the tonal differences, and it creates this fake kind of eraser look that you can clearly see somebody tinkered with it digitally. It's much too perfect an erase for these kinds of varying opacity and pressure. So I don't like that look. What I want is, instead, I want, let's reset that brush. Does not reset anymore. That is interesting. Okay, so I have to do it manually. So if I use a brush like this, and it only produces black volumes and pretty similar diameter strokes, when I use the same brush as an eraser, look what happens. I can immediately retain that style, and it looks like I'm just correcting the image, but I'm not introducing this kind of noise, or I'm not using a tool to cut through some style that is no longer represented with the eraser. So in that sense, I can just correct the image, and I get a perfect result that it just looks like I would have drawn it like this from the beginning. So the eraser just gives me the ability to produce a stroke or a negative stroke that just looks just like the stroke itself, which means this will always integrate and it will always look good. And you can see that with the paper texture here, it integrates pretty well. If I switch that off, it still works. And of course, you can use any color background if you want to. You can use bright blue background. There's no issue with that. It just works the exact same. It's just a matter of preference, right? So for now, I'm using that. And then let's see what we can produce that way. So another thing that is important is that you have a minimum diameter. And why is that? Think about the pens that you use on paper, right? You select one with a diameter. It says 0.3 or 0.1 or 0.5 or 0.7. So, and that doesn't change, right? If you have too much of an offset in diameter, you have this stroke, and then next to it you have these strokes. it creates a style that is not believable to just come from 1 or 2 pens, right? And I want it to be a consistent pen brush stroke, so therefore I am just using something that always has the same diameter. So this is set up to be a 12 point, and I will not change that. I will maybe, or let's say, I will make that bigger, sure, to paint volumes, but I will not make it smaller than the 12 point. And as an eraser, it's the same thing. I will erase no less than the 12 point, and you can already see how this works perfectly. And maybe bigger, yeah, you can erase bigger, sure, doesn't matter. But I want to get that same diameter of brush stroke and the same grain that comes with that to erase the lines as well as to draw the lines. So I will not go thinner, because look what happens if you go now much thinner. Can't even see it anymore. Okay. Yeah, see how this doesn't look like it's the same universe of stroke. It looks like now it's exposing itself to be fake or a digital. Of course, if you would do that consistently and it's part of your style that you use very different sizes in brushstroke, like on some comics the artists use a different outlines to get maybe some of that cell shaded look. That's fine. I'm just explaining what I'm doing. So I am using the same brush diameter pretty much always. And this is set up, it will just change very slightly on pressure, maybe only 20%, and that's it. So that being said, let's draw something. And when we draw something, you might want to use some reference. I like to be very transparent on the process. I think you figured that out by now. So I'll show you quickly what I will use maybe for reference images and what I usually use and what I like there. All right, just very quickly about the reference stuff. Of course, I draw a lot of stuff without any reference. I also like to think of that as a skill that is very worth having, not needing reference. But at the same time, if you like reference, what I'm doing is I like to use photo reference, because photo reference, it doesn't suggest a style to me, a painterly style or a drawing style already. I do not like to look at other drawings for reference, just so you understand that. So here we have some stuff from, I think, Adobe stock, which is okay. And you can use that without licensing, of course, because you're just looking at it, right? We're not taking anything from that and not infringing of any licenses or copyright like that. It's just like looking at something in reality and just imitating it, which is not illegal by any means. So I just have here something that I'm planning to do, like a castle maybe on a hill, and then a character in front that's looking at the castle. So that's what I think I want to go for. And then I just have some reference for the architecture. Of course, lighting and everything else. It's not that important since we're doing line art, black and white for now. Maybe then later coloring it will be a question of whether we use this color palette or more of that color palette. But for now, that is fine. I have 4 images that I like. I like this open wall with the bells. Maybe I'm going to bring that. And I like some of the trees, the cobblestone, and also rocks, of course, and clouds. But then again, everything has to be highly stylized in black and white. So let's jump into the canvas again. So once I made up my mind about the ref, I want to start drawing now. And as always, doing this on a new layer, and there will be only line work and eraser use from here on out. And as always, we're going from rough to refined, which is pretty important. So here we go. The first, I want to define maybe an area. It's almost like doing a silhouette. There needs to be a character, and then we know that we want some structures up here. So the project is called, I think, Approaching the Castle is what I named it. So there needs to be a castle, as you saw in the Ref 2. That's what I'm going for. So, and also I want there to be layers to this. I want it to slope up here, so you get the feel of an incline, and you have some nice natural rounded rocks maybe, and some vegetation, of course. I like all of the long grass and some bushes, some trees. So we just switching back and forth between eraser and brush that way. And I strongly recommend you have shortcuts for that, right? That is I'm just trying stuff. Well, it's a little bit too even. I want this bell thing in here. I saw in the ref. I'm not yet entirely sure how to do it. So maybe it will be like exaggerated with kind of the window in here, and then maybe we'll have something like this, right? And then let's see. Maybe a little. Now increasing the eraser size. Sometimes good to get rid of lines. So this will be the foreground here. And then we'll have a character. So you can, of course, cut this to have that separate background, and even the character. We can make this just cut the layers. So now what we can do is we can reposition things. Excuse me. So, but the main attraction, of course, here is that thing that I'm not yet sure how it exactly looks. And I want to make sure this is going to be a tree. I hope. And maybe have the bell thing in here. That could be good. Maybe a special kind of a bell that would also be good. Exaggerate this a little bit. But yeah, I have to kind of remind yourself that you don't do too much detail from the get-go, because this should really come much later. And for now, we just want to have a nice little composition. Maybe we'll make this a post. Could be good. Yeah, maybe like this, more simple. And yeah, the further we get, the more it is possible to have some nice little details. Maybe there's a clock tower of some sort. Maybe this thing is too big and maybe it's too ugly too. And maybe there needs to be special design for this. Yeah, I really like a round shape. Come to think of it, like an oval. Of course, we need to respect perspective a little bit for that one, but it would be cool, I think, if the bell was inside the structure like this. Of course, then a lot of the other design goes out the window here. And maybe it's not a good idea. I don't know yet. Maybe this needs to be a little bit like this. Just an experiment, of course. Doesn't look good. It's not coming together in a way that is very pleasing. Sometimes, yeah, can be hard to make your own designs on the fly, right? That is a very tricky thing. But for this this method is actually an all right method, because as you can see, we just keep sketching, and the sketch later will become the final product with that kind of a brush setup. I think it's possible to make that work. I got shitty control over my lines here. Could this be good? I don't know. And then, of course, maybe the whole thing needs to be faster, bigger or smaller, or repositioned slightly. Excuse me, as much as perspective allows us to do that. So intuitively, I will make that smaller, which of course yeah, you can do. And smaller, yes, but also higher maybe. And then maybe you could have people standing over here. So like a pathway towards the other stuff. We're happy you can just remerge these layers. And then of course there's the character, which let's reposition a little bit and to be a little bit, I like the size is good. And now what we need to do is to slowly refine him. I think it's a him. Same thing here. I want him to have a backpack. Actually, I'm using one of a character that I already designed for a graphic novel project here. So that way, can make this a little bit less tedious, because of course it is hard to just design everything every time, design all of the stuff in the image just for one image. This is a noble cause, but it's also extremely hard to do, to come up with something compelling just on the fly every single time. And I'm guilty of this a little bit too much, trying to do that, and it can be very exhausting. So once in a while you just stick to what you know, maybe especially when trying a new technique. So we got the backpack going on, and it's the same here. Right now it's not looking so hot, but the further we get, we get away from the roughness and more into the details, this will work. Giving him the dark long hair. And then yeah, slowly refining that stuff. And of course, you can erase from that later. From the blackness of shapes is not an issue. You can always erase that again if we don't want it, and then refine some strokes in there. Right now this doesn't make sense. It's just for showing you. Same over here. And then slowly maybe add some details. You get the idea. So I'm going to do this for a while now, and I'm checking back with you in a second. Excuse me. When I did a little bit more work, and then I'll explain what I did. So see you in a second. All right, so let's discuss quickly what we've done here. We're about an hour in, I would say, more or less, and you could see in the time lapse that I tried to pretty much treat this as a sketch. So what I mean by that is that I didn't have a separate sketch. I didn't do any extremely rough work and then just drew new lines over that. What I did, and what I think is the advantage of this approach by having black lines, is that you can do the rough sketch and develop that rough sketch into the final sketch without needing any starting over or anything like that. So we have a few layers, which is basically just foreground, mid, background, and the character. And like organizing it like this is pretty convenient. Of course, you can combine these at all times and then just cut the lines out again. It's what I also like to do. So depending on what you want, you could say basically I'm done here. If I wanted to just have the sketch and then as a basis to making a painting and not use the sketch later, that would already, I would argue, be too refined or almost. So and we can stop and just use this as a sketch and then start painting over it or underneath the lines, and then later get rid of the lines, and we have the master plan for the painting right here. For me, this is not why I'm doing this. I'm doing this because I want to create line art. So that means the line art is the final product here. And then maybe later I'll put some color or some shading of some sort, but we'll see about that. And but for now, I want this to look compelling just as line art. And of course, for that, we're not quite there. We're getting there. So you can see that I changed the design of that bell tower wall shrine thingy quite a bit. I like it now. It looks pretty interesting. And then I also made similar design choices on the building, whether you regard this as a temple or church or anything like that, sacred place, no, whatever. There's a story here, there's two characters, and then being observed by obviously the main protagonist, so to speak. What lacks here now is the depth. I would say I want to express a little bit more of that just via blacks and strokes. So I need to make a foreground that has more contrast. I'm going to introduce some blacks in the foreground and then also try to mend this into the middle ground here by just slowly dissolving the blacks into strokes. So that's what we're doing now. Stay tuned, we'll do another time lapse and I'll talk to you in a bit. All right, guys. So I'm putting the stylus away. We're done here with the drawing. At least I want to leave it at that. Get my mug out of the way so that you can see. So as you can see at the time lapse again, one thing that is really cool is that you can just block in blacks and then erase from the blacks. And now if we zoom into this for once, you will see that this looks pretty analog, right? This could absolutely be a scan of just some black and white analog line art. And you even have this roughness of the paper simulation that I put on there. And we could pretty much now put color on it. So if you're interested in that, let me know down below, and maybe we can do a follow-up where I can show you how to digitally put color in there and what are the options. Of course, everything has to do with personal preference and style. You can see that I'm not doing a lot of hatching. I'm not doing any cross hatching, any of that stuff. That's just my style. I like the high contrast black and white because I usually like to colorize these. and I like to do the color, set the tonal control there instead of just using hatching to express these difference in tone and shading. So yeah, this is usually what I would do, pretty much my go-to style. But of course, as you go along, you will develop your own style, and then you will see what makes sense for you, depending on what kind of a color, or if any, you will put on it eventually. So with that being said, let me know what you think about this piece, and if you like to see some colorization work. So guys, we're done here. I hope you liked this little demo and my explanation. I hope you can maybe learn something, take away something for yourself, for your own art. Whatever you're doing, line art, comic art, whatever style you're doing, maybe let me know down below. Maybe if you have some questions, also put them down below and we can talk about them in another video. But for now, from me, that's been it. And see you again in another video. Take care.